or learn more about the behavior or the settings. Why do we do this? To enhance the quality of the intervention, to help us respond systematically, and address legal or ethical considerations. No, we won't go into this one. So, when should an FBA be conducted? We do this when the behavior is significantly different from his or her classmates. If you walk into a classroom and the behavior is not significantly different, think of it more as a broader issue than just that student. Does it significantly impact learning of others? Have other interventions been done and failed to address that behavior? Is it a behavior that's serious or persistent or a threat to safety? And is it likely to result in significant disciplinary response? Again, just mentioning one more time, do not do an FBA by yourself or a behavior support plan by yourself. Do this as part of a team. Now, we've started with this piece over here. There is a continuum of functional assessment. Thinking functionally is the lowest end of that spectrum. This is the adult who simply says, I think they did that to get attention. I think they need more of my time and attention. That's a thinking functionally intervention. We can go up to the MiniFDA. The MiniFDA is based on the case study presentation. It's possible to go, I think that this kiddo's doing it to escape. I'm just curious, can we give them more support in math or in reading or whatever it is? And we do that intervention. We've just done a MiniFDA. We've sort of formalized it in that there's multiple people talking about it. We can go up to a full FBA, do a interview, do observations, etc. We can go on up to a full functional analysis, is where we actually do this and then we test it. We actually go in and we say, this is a kid who headbangs. We think that they headbang to, headbanging, you've seen that, right? Okay. We think that they do that to escape things that they don't like. So what do? In a functional analysis, in a functional assessment, you're going to try to prevent them from headbanging. In a functional analysis, you will actually go in and create situations that will increase it and decrease it, and you will go back and forth to see if you really have nailed down the hypothesis, if you've really gotten it right. I do not want anybody in here thinking that they're going to do functional analysis. That's for very controlled clinical settings. Okay? But what we're going to move to now is talking about this MiniFDA and the FBA plus observation. Okay, when is a MiniFDA appropriate? When a student doesn't pose a danger to self or others, they're not at risk for change of placement, and the team is pretty confident that their hypothesis is accurate. If you've got that, just do the Mini. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to start looking in your packet. Do each of you have a work packet there that starts with case study on the front, case study James? The forms that you have there are called the facts, F-A-C-T-S. And you will see at the top of those pages, facts Part A and Part B. Part A on the back of the first page and Part B on the second page. You see that? Yes? Do we have more packets? I know I've got a couple here. Who needs, anybody else not get them? Oops, excuse me. Sorry. Does everybody else have them? Okay. So back side of page 1 is Part A. Next is Part B. What I want you to do, though, is I want you to go back 6 pages. And what you'll see on one side, it says Blanc Form Masters. See that? Just a title page. Underneath where it says Blanc Form Masters, I want you to write this URL. www.pbis.org. And here's why I want you to write this. These in electronic form are available at that website, and I want you to be able to use this electronically. I want you to have clean masters, and there's no point in me printing it and you photocopying it. So if you go to that website and you go under resources and you look for tools, it will actually have the facts. It will have a whole packet there. So you can have as many clean copies as you wish to print from your own clean, perfect little master. I want us to walk through this, and then I'm going to walk through the case. So as we look at Part A, this is a basic interview that you can do with a teacher, with other staffs. You can do it with parents and family members. I've actually known people who do this pretty routinely with middle and high school students. So as you walk through this, you can put the student and their grade, the interviewer, the date, who you're interviewing there. The student profile. Now this is the piece, as Kim and Linda were talking about, I want to think not only about weaknesses, these are the reasons why we care, is you also want to look at some of their strengths. Strengths is also an important piece of building the behavior support plan. If you know what they like, what their strengths are and are connected to, it gives you something to work with in a positive direction. Problem behaviors. This is a place where we are going to identify each of the problem behaviors of concern. That does not mean that we're going to write a behavior support plan for each of the problem behaviors. It just means we're identifying them at this point. Now, somebody had asked Sherry if we could have a little bit more of a discussion about response classes, where behavior is used for the same or a different, to serve the same or a different function. Behavior that can have two functions. Okay. So let's take silly, goofy behavior. Do you know what I'm talking about? Give me a silly, goofy behavior that you might experience with one of your students. Making noises. So they're being silly, being goofy, making silly noises. Let's say that they do that in PE. And all of the other kids turn and look at them and they all laugh. It is possible that in that setting, what the student is looking for is peer attention. Now let's take that student and take them into math class. And the student does silly noises in math class. But in math class, let's add another piece of information. In math class, they're performing way below grade level. And they struggle with math. They don't get the concepts, they don't turn in the work, it takes a lot of additional support, but they're mainstreamed, and the interpreter is not able to give them the kind of instructional support they need to be successful. And in that setting, making silly noises, and the teacher goes, I've had it with you, out of here, go to the office. In that situation, the student may be escaping math class or the embarrassment of not knowing how to be successful there. Same behavior, serving two different functions in two different settings. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, it's also possible that they have a whole repertoire of behaviors that serve the same function as well, and those are called response classes. So they may have found many creative ways to get out of class. Okay. Any other questions about that? Okay. Now, if we go down to step 4, in step 3 we've identified the problem behavior. In step 4, we're going to identify the routines. So we're going to look at their day, and we're going to say, we want to know what are each of the things, what are each of the events that happen in their routine. Now, we may start with first period in high school, or we may start with the bus ride. But we want to start with whatever makes sense in their routines for their day. Where do we start? And we go through each of those scheduled times, activities, and then we're going to do the likelihood of the problem behavior. We're going to need to connect it back and take a look back at the behaviors we've got and say, what's the likelihood of problem behavior occurring during that activity in that area? And we're going to actually write in there, what are the behaviors that occur in each of those? This is where you start being able to separate which behaviors in which settings. Okay. Now the next piece is you take a look at section 3 there under the problem behaviors, and what you're going to do is you're going to pick out some of the problem behaviors of greatest concern and see if they look like a response class. If you say, well, I think that these things are all happening together, and what you're going to do is you're going to move over to that next page, which is the facts part B. So let's say you've got silly behavior that you think is about getting peer attention in class. They make funny noises, they stand up and do things like waving their hands around and whatever it is. And you're going to take that, and for each of those routines, you're going to do the part B. This is a follow-up on each of those. Okay? So in step 1, you fill out the basic information. In step 2, you fill in what is the routine, the activity, or the context, and what are the problem behaviors. You're going to start getting more specific now and more detailed. So how often does the problem behavior occur? What does it look like? How long does the problem behavior last? What's the intensity or level of danger? Step 4. So here we're looking at setting events, the set up, and the immediate antecedents, the set off. In step 5, what are the things that occur right afterwards? What are the consequences? Recognizing that they may be positive or negative, what are the things that occur right after? And in this case, we're looking at things that maintain the problem behavior. Now we go to a summary of the behavior, and this is going to be the basis for our hypothesis statement. Setting events and predictors, problem behavior, and maintaining consequences. Step 7 is what's your confidence level in that summary? How confident are you that when these setting events and predictors occur, that the behavior will occur and it will be supported by those maintaining consequences? If you are sure that you've nailed it, absolutely positive, you've got a group of people going, we're sure that this is what it's about, you can start developing your behavior support plan. If not, you're probably going to need to go from this, doing the facts, to adding some observational components to it. Okay? Let's go back to the page 2 there, the case study on James. James is a 4th grader, 9 years old. Okay. He's energetic, has a sense of humor. He's persistent about some things. I'm not sure if that's always necessarily a strength, but it can be. Right? Problem behaviors that are identified: he's disruptive, work is not completed, and he destroys objects. There's also refusal to complete assignments, and he yells and cries. Let's take a look at when and where and with whom this happens. If you look at step 4, we have his schedule. His schedule starts with warm-up activities. He has a language arts block. He has recess, math, lunch, social studies, and science. When is it most likely that he's going to have problem behavior? Language arts. The likelihood of problem behavior there is a 5. And during language arts, what happens? Refuses to work, yells, and argues. Now in math, he needs prompting. So he has some problem behavior, but it's not to the level of severity that you see with language arts. In social studies, the same thing. A little bit of an increase there. Do you already have some guesses about what may be going on here? Okay. So from step 5, what they've said is, we're going to look at the language arts block, because that's where that problem behavior is most likely to occur. Let's flip it over. Let's go to facts part B, the greater, more in depth. So what do we know? Step 2, the routine activities or context, usually during independent work period. Now, there's a question I might want to just really quickly ask is, if I know that during language arts is usually during independent time. I just might be really curious and go back and say, so on math and social studies, how much independent work does he have? And my guess is what you're going to find is probably doesn't have quite as much independent work, or the independent work looks different somehow in the sense that it may be something that they're more fluent, have a greater mastery of. Okay? Problem behavior, work refusal, behavior escalation, which looks like yelling, crying, destroying paper and pencils. So now it goes more into the behavior. What does the problem behavior look like? Refuses to complete assignments, destroys paper, pencils, cries, yells, etc. How often does it occur? Typically 2 to 3 times per week, sometimes daily. Is this enough that you're going to be able to see patterns in the behavior? Okay. What if it said the last time it escalated to the level that he was biting and kicking somebody, but it only happened once a year? What are you going to say? If it's only happened once in a year, it's going to be very hard to create a support plan around. It's going to be very hard to figure out what the pattern is. Now, if that's just an escalation from this crying, yelling, etc., now we can say, well, we see that that's all part of the same response class. But if that's a single event or just a couple events, it's going to be very difficult. He cries, let's see, how long does the problem occur? If he cries, becomes very upset, it lasts about an hour. So we've got some fairly significant duration here. Intensity level, behavior is usually intense and disruptive. Let's go down under step 4 to the setting events, the setup. Negative social interactions increase the likelihood. So if James has had an argument with a peer during recess, if there has been a conflict at home and mom and dad were fighting, it's more likely. This is a place where the stories about home matter. You can show a direct relationship. If you can say, for example, I know that when James comes in and mom and dad have just had a fight, some of you may work in situations where this has happened, where you can reliably have these discussions where mom or dad has been arrested and taken away for family violence, and you know that the kiddo is going to come in armed for bear. He's going to come in with his fist clenched, he's going to come in with his teeth clenched, or it may be that they come in, moody and sullen and hardly can move. But you know that it's going to be a tough day. We know now that contextual setting, that setup, increases the likelihood of problem behavior. Okay? Environmental features. When these two things have happened and it's followed by a reprimand or a correction, the activity is too long or the tasks require written response, James is pretty likely to struggle. What happens afterwards? Well, he does this, and what gets obtained? Adult attention, peer attention, and it seems like he's avoiding or escaping hard tasks potentially. Now what we're going to need to do is get the people together who know James, and we're going to need to follow this through with a summary of the behavior. Now, I know it's really tempting to say he gets peer attention, adult attention, and escapes the task, and that's not going to serve you well. What do you think the primary reason or the supporting, maintaining consequences for James in this situation? Now, we don't know that because we don't know James. And this is where your knowledge of your students really makes a difference. Because here you're going to say, I'm just guessing here, but I think it's adult attention. Because have you ever seen all the adults rally around James when he's going on? We all rally around and we try to make him feel better, and we talk to him and try to talk it down, and he goes, spends time with the counselor, and pretty fair bet. So here's our best guess. Here's what I would like you to do. And actually, if you turn it over, you can see they've followed it out. And so I want you to bring this packet back with you next time as well, because we're going to talk about filling this out and continuing on as we go through this. Here's what I would like you to do. Let's go back to the blank facts, just a couple more pages back. I would like you to take one of you, take your blank facts. I would like that person to be the interviewer and somebody else on your team be the interviewee. Take one of your cases And I want you to walk through this as though you are doing the facts with a classroom teacher. I want you to fill out the facts. Once you have facts A done and you've got a routine that seems to be an area of increased concern, take that area or activity and move to facts B. Any questions about this? Okay. You're going to have some time to work on this. What I would like you to do is raise your hand if you have a question or concern, and Sherry and Steve, and we'll be here to support you as we go through this. I want you to have the support you need, but I do want you to actually fill this out. I want you to have the practice of having done the facts. Okay? Are you ready? Okay.
I have the dragnet through my one of